Welcome to another episode of Lifestyle After 5. It is another Wednesday. We're glad to be here. For those that are joining us on WDJY 99.1, we say welcome. For those that will be watching this on YouTube or Spotify, don't forget to like and subscribe. Today, we have Richard Bukowski. Rich Normus B is his rap name, as we refer to him on today. Today, we're going to talk about a sensitive subject. As you know, last Wednesday we just had 9/11. And so Rich is going to tell us he actually was there in New York. So he's the first person that I've ever talked to that has firsthand knowledge of what he's seen. Now, I was in DC at the time, but I was nowhere near the Pentagon or anything like that. But Rich is going to dive in. So without further ado, let's all welcome Rich. Rich, welcome. So tell us, Rich, what was going through your mind? What happened?
Well, again, it was a regular Wednesday, right? As everybody, would have expected, right? Like what was,
Mhm.
no, everybody remembers, 9/10, right? It was every day for us, right? So I was
Mhm.
heading to work in the morning. And again, I worked downtown for a company called Thompson Financial, which was on 195 Broadway. So not
Mhm.
far from Wall Street, very close to the Trade Center. In fact, it was 2 blocks away from the Trade Center. And I had a meeting in the morning and I forgot my laptop power cord. So, as
Mhm.
a salesperson and things like that, you're always with your laptop, you kind of take it everywhere you go. And I was just to go. And
Mhm.
the meeting happened to be downtown. So I said, great, let me whip to the office. I'll grab my, um,
Mhm.
my cord and I'll head out. So I'm on the subway heading toward in, and I started to hear like chatter and rumor about planes hitting the Trade Center, possibly something in like a five or whatever, a few minutes later, somebody said something about the Pentagon. So in my
Mhm.
head, I'm like, okay, I'm very familiar with downtown. Again, I went to school there,
Mhm.
worked there, a lot. Things have hit the Trade Center before. Right? It's helicopter
Mhm.
blades and kind of other things. And it was basically kind of a wash, right? Yeah. It fixed, didn't really do much damage or kind of things like that. So just like, any other regular day.
Yeah, because from my understanding, it's actually engineered to take some hits.
Right. As yeah, when what I've learned, like probably a lot of other people after 9/11, that it's actually a cone, like an upside down cone, right? It has no middle kind of structure. All the weight bearingness and everything like that is on the outside. So they say it's like if you were a fly going into a web, you'd probably just kind of like either go right through it or just you wouldn't do damage to the whole thing. From what I understand, nobody considered a jet plane fuel full of fuel, and jet fuel is very
Mhm.
different than regular fuel. So they didn't, I guess in design they didn't take that in consideration, but why would they? I got a station away, and because the trains were already starting, again, shit was already starting to hit the fan and this and that. So I had to get off at Wall Street and walk. Now, again, I'm thinking, okay, it's bad, right? I've never heard of anything like this before. But that walk from the train station, to my office, which and I'm now heading toward the Twin Towers,
Mhm.
and it was the experience of coming out. This happened to be one of the train stations where when you came out from underground, you would have this amazing, perfect, centralized view of the Trade Center, right? So that was like my first experience. Both planes had already hit, but they were both standing and burning. And so the other thing, I want to just mention about that day, and you may have heard about it, and people kind of talk about it, but that 9/11 sky,
I've heard about the smoke and that I've
right?
seen things where people said it seemed like looked like a demon in the sky and
No, no. Well, the smoke
right.
was and the bellowingness of that
Right.
burning. It's like you think. It's kind of smoky. It's moving with
Mhm.
no. But I'm talking about the sky before, right? There again, and again, some people talk about it, and again, I don't know if it was such a localized system, but this had to be the most amazing blue sky that I have ever seen in my entire life. It was a noticeable violet. And so if you ever kind of come across it and stuff like that, you'll hear that.
Now, was there any type of weird or eerie feeling or anything unusual feeling that you got while you was heading to work, or it was just a normal
Well,
feeling?
no, 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 no. You knew shit changed. Well, one, we all had 2001 cell phones, right? They were basically
Mhm,
just flip phones. So everybody was trying to get on a phone, obviously, and or got a call.
mhm,
None of the phones were working. Right? The actual main antenna for the cell phones is actually on the twin towers. So I'm now kind of calling and looking to see if I can contact home, this and that. But again, walking from Wall Street to John Street, again, might be 6 blocks. Again, that's
mhm,
old, that old, downtown brick, was, um, there was nobody on the street. Traffic was already closed. Um, so, you heard, sirens. And again, you're staring at the building. And then what I didn't know at the time was I started to see material hitting like smokily or fiery, kind of starting to hit the ground. So there was a lot of paper, half burnt, things like that, raining
mhm.
down that I
Wow.
wasn't, kind of expecting. Again, this is a lot of posting. I saw like shoes and kind of things like that that you knew were not regularly kind of there. It was like always like kind of something, right? And so with the lack of any foot traffic, any car traffic, the subways aren't running, and the surrealness of that moment is a walk, that 5 block walk I'll kind of never forget. Again, always on your phone, always, this is the first kind of like, again, smack in the face that, that we got as Americans, like that. Don't even know really what to do.
So, what was your reaction? It's like you got this eerie feeling, it's just like a scene out of a movie, and you just standing there alone on the street with your flip phone with no service. What was going through your mind at that point?
Well, strangely, there's two main things going through my. One is that, again, this, desire for this electric cord. Again, it's like that. I think the very different part of like, how we perceive work, right? So I
Mhm.
had a job to do, right? I had to go get my cord, so I can be ready for this 10 o'clock meeting. That I should have no problem with. But again, it was so that, and having to go to the bathroom, I had to, like, I had to pee for, like, since I was on the subway. So I figured, you know, both of those things were driving me toward my building, right? Like, and as I mentioned before, things happen like into the Trade Center, right? Things happen in New York. It really didn't. No
Yeah.
one knew. I didn't think that anything like that was weird, or kind of something. A lot of people kept asking me, why did you get closer? And it was like, I had a job to do. I was like, I didn't think they were going to come down.
Did you ever make it to the office to get that cord?
I got to the corner. The building was already shut down. They want, kind of nothing going on. And as I like, so I was on the corner of John and Maiden Lane, right? So,
Mhm.
again, if New Yorkers or anyone who's been a kind of a tourist will know that, like, literally across the street from the Trade Center. Um, no, I kind of was hanging out actually, since I couldn't get into the building. I was like, okay, my day is clearly changed, right? I'm gonna have to call my client, cancel, and this, but there's action going on, right? So I'm like, I can't turn around. The subways are kind of closed and stuff. So I figured I'd wait it out. And again, that was the actual part of it.
Yeah, because
So
in a way you are stranded.
yeah, I
You
really didn't
stranded
have anywhere to
downtown
go.
and you gotta pee. That's a bad
And I got,
combination.
yeah, 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 yeah.
'Cause you ever at
The
least find
so I
somewhere to relieve yourself.
And again, I have no problem with a little, when in public, when you got to go, when you got to go, you got to go. But that time, it was
You gotta go.
cops and firemen and shit floating all over the place, right? This was not a place that I was not on. But I was kind of resting on a cop car with a few other, pedestrians stranded, and I was watching the helicopters that were on top of the Trade Center, and we were like kind of discussing like, hey, they must have people up there. This must be like a rescue, you know. And
Mhm.
the whole time this is now kind of building that this isn't like a regular, kind of accident, a regular this. You're getting bits and pieces of information from other people, you know. So when the smoke kind of cleared, or when you can kind of see it, I was watching, the helicopters until the building fell down.
Wow. Because I'm not mistaken, they fell down within an hour and a half or so.
Of being
It took a little. Yeah, I can't remember exactly how long it took the buildings to fall.
Oh, they were like within like anywhere. I think one of the buildings was 45 minutes after getting hit, and the other one was
Yeah.
30 minutes after getting hit. Right. And so again, I have, when I have shared this story before, a lot of people ask me, why'd you stay? Like, like, wasn't it like a clear, obvious that you were, you know, in danger? And like, I didn't think that at all. Right. So people who have seen it from a distance in Manhattan said that the building was wobbling. And again, how the hell would I know? I'm kind of looking straight up at it from the bottom.
Now, how
But
far away were you from the buildings at this point?
two city blocks.
Wow.
Actually, one city block. I'm on the corner, and then there's like a street, like asphalt, and then there's the trade center. So across the street. Yeah.
So at this point in your mind, did it ever occur to you like, wow, okay, everything's shut down. I'm stranded. How am I going to get home? And I don't have good cell phone service. Did that ever come to your mind? Like, how am I going to get home? What am I going to do?
Not at that point. Again, my strategy at that point was to wait it out. Just let, they'll put the fire out. They'll reopen the streets, eventually, and again,
Okay.
hopefully, my plan for exit didn't happen until later on.
So are you getting? So y'all just sitting there and y'all watching helicopters,
Yeah,
fly around the building, and you just seeing it burn. So you watching both towers now at this point. I take it.
correct. Yeah,
You're looking at both
one is a
towers.
little obscured by the other. Depending on what certain angles, you can't really see it all.
So
But yes, yeah,
at this point was anybody talking about a terrorist attack or anything, or she thought maybe it was an accident, or did you even
nothing
know that a
open.
plane had hit?
Yeah, nothing open. But like again, when I heard something in the subway about the Pentagon, right? So when I put, Trade Center hit, Pentagon hit, I knew this wasn't an average thing. But not there was no scuttle about like terrorism or anything like that at the site at the time. It's just like
You just think, oh, how ironic! Two planes just flew into the
yeah.
World Trade Center,
And again,
and
there's no
everybody's sitting there talking about it. Well,
yeah.
everything's closed down today. I guess we get a day off.
The kind of the other part about my perspective about that is, I always, as I'm currently a futurist, a strategic forecaster, but I've always felt I've been doing that. I think in my whole life in some form, right?
Mhm,
So I was a relatively well-read person, at that time, right? And in my media life, I've connected with a magazine called Foreign Affairs. It's still around today. It's like a quarterly or something. And it's just like,
mhm.
and I happen to kind of always, they used to have boxes of it like laying around in the corner. So one day I kind of picked one up and found, again, very, amazing views, serious discussion about American foreign policy and global affairs. Right.
Mhm.
And again, if you do any research on prior, the months or years, or like a year prior to 9/11, everybody knew this was coming. I mean, I was reading,
Mhm.
articles and whatever papers from political who are using the word not if but when, right? And so you hear that a lot. Oh, you're gonna catch COVID? No, not if but when, like all that kind of stuff. But it was like we knew a terrorist attack was coming, right? Or at least again I
Yeah.
did.
It just
So
did we know
it didn't
exactly
so it
how it
didn't
was
surprise
coming
me.
though?
I didn't know how. Right? Yeah. But if you would have told me, hey, this is a terrorist attack, I was like, oh, okay. I mean, it was coming. Everybody else kind of knew, like so. I wasn't that surprised, or at least even post the experience and stuff like that. That you know I mean, I knew a terror.
Mhm.
Again, I didn't want to be in it. I didn't want how it affected our country, in a negative way, or any of the parts about it. But I wasn't
Mhm.
surprised. I don't think a lot of people like in Washington or again in that kind of global affair sphere was surprised
They
either.
got
We just
too
didn't know.
comfortable.
Yeah, we didn't know it was going to be this, but
So now you're sitting by a police car and you're watching with the crowd and y'all watching. And now you see the buildings collapse.
right.
What
Well,
now?
okay. So um, first, it was I heard the building collapse, right? So
Okay.
I was kind of still, lamping on the police car kind of thing, like, and now you hear this again. I can never do it justice, but it's just this cracking, loudest cracking sound you ever heard in your entire life, and even I've never been able to. Well, anyway, I heard it, and which drew my attention, to the specific building, and whatever happened, and I started to see the first pieces hit the ground. And again, that's like, again, I don't know if it's a great, honor or, curse, but I have a clear memory of seeing the one of the corner pieces of the roof of the trade center hit the ground. Just
Wow.
kind of like at the corner, right? Um, but visually that was it because I was I was running at that point, right after that point.
I was gonna say,
As soon
at
as
that point, you didn't
yeah,
see the corner hit the ground.
I didn't,
Oh,
yeah, I
y'all
didn't.
bets are off at this point.
Yeah. I was like, at this point, and it was wild. It was kind of because again, it was a bunch of us on this car. It was like the one thing I caught at the corner of my eye as I was leaving, it was just watching everybody else like kind of flee. It almost like it was like we did it like like it was organized. We all kind of like got up and left and ran all like kind of in different directions, but it was just and again a very surreal moment there that kind of running.
I tell you,
Yeah,
the
so I
police
started.
officers was running with you.
Well, there were some. But again, it was horrible to know that there was a lot of guys running in, while we were running out. It was one of the things I really didn't like it as a man and shit. But
What you
yeah,
tell it, because you got to realize those men, brave men and women that ran in were trained. If you
right,
tried to run in there and untrained, you may have just been in their way and caused more problems than good. So
yeah,
sometimes
and
the
again,
best thing if you're untrained is to get away from that situation.
yeah, and they had a job to do. Again, in that kind
Mhm.
of another aspect, they're not paid to turn around when it gets hard, or if it's too hot or shit like that, right? So they're all running in, and I was, again, as I think, over the years when I thought about it, the story I just told you about sitting around on the police car waiting. Again, there were trucks and cars and ambulances all passing me all the time. I'm assuming a lot of those guys they never made it out. It's like, you know, made eye contact with a few of those guys, like, you know. Anyway,
And that was the question I was going to ask you. Was there any particular person besides the building falling that stood out to you?
yeah. Well, post. You mean post or pre or
Well, doing it, it's like, okay,
during?
once the building collapsed, there you like you
Yes,
got the scene of the roof falling and hitting the ground that's forever riveted into your mind.
right.
Is there any
So,
other moments that just stick into your
well,
mind?
yeah. Well, again, there's a lot that happens like really from that point, right? So as I started running, the ground started shaking. A lot of people don't realize it. We had something like a 6.3 on the Richter scale of the building, shaking the ground that it was coming down. And I'd never been in an earthquake before, so running in an earthquake was kind of weird, kind of too. You're kind of like, kind of trying, you know. Plus, you're in lizard brain, right? You're not thinking straight, whatever. You're just thinking, get my ass out of here. And
Mhm.
the storefront windows, as I was running down the street, were all shattering as I was like running by it. So you had that
Oh, wow.
noise, the kind of like a rolling thunder, metal, concrete, you know, s- uh, and then the ground shaking, and then the glass breaking, and then me running, and I'm still carrying my laptop. Right, a lot of people always ask why I carried my laptop the whole time.
Kinda like your phone. You're gonna grab your phone.
Yeah, every contact I have, everything I've been doing, it's kind of like in this bag. So I'm running, and it like. it took me like a block to realize that I was, there was like some kind of realization that I'm going to die, right? Like I'm not going to outrun this building. It's going to crush me. It's like I don't, it's a quarter of a mile tall, right? So as I was running, like, and I guess I passed that first block, and I'm as you probably can't tell from our interaction, and especially with my sexy DJ voice, I'm a little on the heavy side, right? So, you know, I'm running, so um
The
everything's
adrenaline.
bouncing, and all, again, the noise and the thunderous kind of thing, and thinking that I'm going to die. So every couple of like steps I took, I went, okay, I'm gonna die, and then I didn't die, right? So I was like, all right, let me the next step, So I kept like almost, counting down,
Mhm.
like like whenever it is, like this is it, this is death. Like I didn't know, right? And again, knowing, I was running for my life, thinking that I wasn't going to make the next every kind of next step, and again, fucking tourists, terrorists, and kind of like again, a slap in the face to America. Like we're under attack, right? Like all of this was
Mhm.
kind of going on. So I was like, all right, I got to come up with what's kind of going through my mind, and I was thinking about like Biggie Small's last words. Like I spit phrases that will thrill you. No, you're nobody until
Mhm.
somebody kills you, right? Like, and so I'm like, all right, this is my Biggie moment, and I got Rich goes down, with the terrorists and stuff like that. But I didn't have enough, But what I was mainly thinking about was, my daughter. I only had like my daughter was born in July, and that was September. I only had 3 months, so I was like, oh man, I
Oh,
only get
wow.
3 months with my baby. I was like, that sucks. So
Mhm.
so I didn't die. My death never came. So
How far had you gotten before you really felt like you could take that deep breath, like, "Oh God, I'm 5 blocks away now. I think I'm good."
yeah. Again, I thought I was a lot faster, but I really didn't get far. And that moment really never came to me because I was running away from a poisonous plume, right? So
Yeah.
I as I was running, and again realized that maybe I got some more time. Let me, so I picked up my pace a little bit more. But that whole time I was looking behind me because there was this big black plume chasing me. Again, with the noise, you have to remember the noise is always going on right during this whole
Mhm.
time.
'Cause I didn't realize there was an earthquake that happened with that.
Yeah.
But that I mean, it all makes sense now. So, yeah.
So
And
again, I realized, my Olympic running days are, and I thought I made it a lot further, right? But
mhm.
it never happened. And then the plume took me over. It literally knocked me to the ground. Um,
Wow.
and um, and then going back to what you said, and I was running that whole time. And again, not a professional runner. I was out of breath and everything like that. So when it knocked me to the ground, every breath I took was full of that shit. And it didn't help. There was not a lot of oxygen. So I felt like I was drowning. I was just coughing on the
Okay.
ground, rolling, you know, everything's kind of going on. The noise is still kind of going on. And then as soon as I can kind of try to exhale and try to take another again, just another mouthful of filth and shit, and kind of rolling on the ground. And again, I'm like, okay, this is it, right? Here I am. I guess I'm just gonna die squirming on the street. But when you talk about the most important people, who come across your life, a doorman from a building like across the street comes out, grabs me by my jacket, and pulls me into his building,
Oh, wow.
and could
It's like an
not,
angel there.
in a million years, right? Just kind of like by the, and helping them a little bit. I see other people, kind of heading in that direction as well. So he gets in, and I'm like, he closes the door behind me, and the last thing, the last person, I'm like vomiting, just kind of like again, just, I'm all gray, all the way across. My eyes are caked full of shit, and whatever. But he gets me up, I'm like, try to clean off my face and whatever. And there is actually air in this, in this lobby.
Mhm.
So I'm I can kind of starting to catch a little bit of my breath, right? So there's a tide of people from the streets or from the building, probably upstairs or whatever, all in this in this lobby. It's packed full of people. Some people are coughing, some people crying. Everyone's just like kind of unsure. Again, the noise outside, the ground shaking. Kind of not. So
He's like an angel. He was like your angel that appeared.
yeah,
That's why
I
you have to be
actually.
nice to people.
So whenever getting back to downtown was really hard. Like eventually, uh, uh, it was basically a criminal,
It's
and
lunchtime.
you had
Make
to
sure to drink water.
get escorted around and stuff. Well, once it finally started opening up again, I retraced my steps. I wanted to see how far I got, really, because I thought I ran
Mhm.
all the way to like Water Street, which is like on the on the other side of the island, and I realized I didn't make it no further than a block and a half, right, from like the top, like
Wow.
that, from like John Street, like maybe 2 blocks if you want to call it. And then I
Hmm.
actually found the building, that I took refuge in, and the guy who was the doorman there was the doorman there, and I recognized him, and I was like, dude, I gotta tell you, you saved my life, like, and he's like, he's like, not even like, I'm like, no, he was like, it was a crazy day, like, a lot was going on, whatever. He was like, and I'm like, no, man, you saved my life. And I was like, I like, can I do something for you? Like, like sports tickets, can I send you a Christmas card every year? Can I do something? A cup of coffee? Can I go to Starbucks right now and get you a cup of coffee? And he wouldn't take it. Um,
Wow.
yeah.
That's cool. Have you seen him since then?
Nah.
After that,
You don't know. Downtown was kind of closed off for a long time. It was kind of like I would go back. I eventually did get into my building. Again, that's a kind of another story, but no, that was my last connection with him.
wow. Did you? Well, I guess camera phones wasn't as big back then to take a picture and
Nothing like that.
everything.
No.
Our
Yeah,
technology was just
that's Star
getting
Trek
there.
shit. Yeah.
You know, one thing that I don't know if you ever thought about, it's one thing to survive having this plume and trying to breathe through this plume, but you're lucky you didn't get trampled by the running crowd once you fell down.
I'm gonna have to go yes. Only, um yeah. I never thought of it that way. Yeah, there,
Because you got to think people they can't see either, and you got
no one
people
could see.
running.
Yeah. It
Yeah,
wouldn't surprise
and
me.
and you fall down, and no one step on you and trip on you and keep running over you because they're gasping for air and life as well.
Yeah. There were, and I still get, unfortunately, to experience that scenario. It's a little later on in the story. I don't know if you want to know more about like what happens inside the building or
Yeah,
kind of.
sure. Yeah, tell
Yeah.
us about that.
Okay.
That's our next segment, escaping the tower. You just gave us inside the chaos. So now let's
Yeah.
go into escaping the
So
tower.
yeah. So last we left, we find Rich standing in a lobby, full of people, and so there's instruction from like I guess the fire warden or whatever is
Mhm.
for people to leave the lobby and go into the basement. And there were like the doors were opening up, and there was a shuffle, kind of almost a tide of people, just kind of. I'm sure you might know that from like being like at concerts or something like that. You just or
Mhm.
sub, you're just going with the flow. You're not even like you don't have a choice. So I'm like going with the flow, and then I'm like, there's something about being in the basement right now did not make sense, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna kind of pass on this basement thing. And so I was able to kind of sidestep the crowd as they were going down, and there was a spiral staircase. It was an old, Manhattan building, and had those small step spiral staircase. So I
Mhm.
was like, I'd rather, if I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die on a higher floor. I'm not dying in no basement. So
Get buried in.
yeah. So at this point, I actually was first time I got to sit down, and I sat on some of those stairs. And by that time, the power went out in the building, so we were all in. It was just black, and the but there was the air inside the stairway was still
Mhm.
cleaner now than the area that was in in the lobby, and it was literally just kind of like that zone.
Now, was
So
that
I
lobby
felt like
crowded? Was it a lot of people in that lobby?
packed. That's what I'm saying. Like you
Okay,
couldn't.
it was
It was
packed. Okay,
just
yeah.
like an ocean of people, and again, you didn't have a choice to where you wanted to go and stuff.
Mhm.
So I was able to catch my breath a little further in the stairway, as a little bit more kind of cleaner air. So again, it's pitch black. I'm now like, oh, let me go up. Like so I'm now feeling the walls and like trying to feel where the stairs are and kind of going around. And again, there's just chaos going on everywhere. And I reached the next floor and the door's locked. Uh, Most people know that in fire situations, every other floor is open, right? So I know this door is locked. That means the door on top of me has to be open, right? So I do it again, and there was a lot of flashbacks to me about stairs and darkness and things like that. I don't kind of like that. Where before it probably would have never even made a difference to me. So I feel my way up to the next floor, and the door opens, and I go in, and again it's pitch black, but you can kind of see and hear that there's like people, and I am feeling my way around, and everyone's like just to have a wall, right? So I can follow this wall, let's just see what happens. And every once in a while I come across a person who's kind of standing there or kind of something like that. And I think the floor ended up being it's like a medical offices. There seemed to be a lot of medical people there. So I kind of felt my way around and finally found an empty spot and just slid down the wall, again with my laptop
Mhm.
and my and that was it. I was like, okay, I'm probably going to be living here for a while or whatever it is, or dying here, or. So the emergency, speaker comes on, again, it's the fire warden. They're like, uh, stay where you are. We don't know what to do, you know. And my favorite
Wow.
part is conserve your breathing. I was like, oh, awesome. I'm going to be like skip breathing for the rest of, for the rest of my life here. So I'm trying not to, overbreathe. And I turn around and there's a woman sitting next to me. And again, I really can't see her, and I can tell she's a woman and all that. And I ask her if she's okay. I'm like, are you. And she said that she was. And then, I was like, we don't know how we're all getting home and all of that. This is when I started thinking about, if I survive, how do I get home here? And I asked her, if she was okay. Did she have a place to stay? Is your, like something like that. And she goes, yeah, I have a hotel uptown. I just flew in from LA and I had an interview, at the trade center, and I was running late. And the running
Mm.
late from the airport saved her life. So she was also
Wow.
outside the building, kind of standing by me, conserving her oxygen, not knowing what we were going to do, waiting for kind of some other thing. So I do come across, and every once in a while, I'm sure in the news and things like you come across a lot of people who like, were sick that day, didn't go in. The kid had something to do in school, so they didn't go. There were like a lot of these kind of random scenarios.
Mhm.
Uh, yeah, so this lady flew in. So she's, I kind of gave her some instruction on how to walk from downtown to uptown because she was never going to get, a train or a cab or anything like that. But a few minutes later, the speaker comes on again. They're like, okay, we're seeing police outside our building. Please come to your, exit or whatever, your nearest exit. So, now we're all in dark, shuffling, trying to get to the stairs. And we get to the stairs, and there's a little bit more light because a lot of other doors seem to be open and people moving around.
Now they didn't
And
have
then
any emergency lighting there?
emergency lighting did not work. The speakers definitely
Wow.
worked. Yeah. But so I eventually, again, you were talking about the crowds and
Mhm.
kind of different things. I've never more, and there's more to the story, but I've never been more. That experience made me. I've never been more proud to be a New Yorker in my entire life, and I'll show you examples. So we get outside, and I finally get outside the building, passing that lobby, where all that, and it was snowing. I called nuclear snow. So the noise wasn't as bad anymore, but it was just all gray and all snow. It was all dust and shit, and whatever was kind of coming out. I call it nuclear snow because God knows what the hell was in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I had I guess if you want to call it, enough sense about historically, and I went and grabbed a handful of it, and put it in my put it in my bag as a kind of memento of my freaking experience. Um, now, so the next chapter is Rich gets home. Do you kind of want to ask anything, or is there something more?
No, I mean that's great. So yeah, you finally get out of the building,
Right.
and so what now? You're out of the building, and you in this nuclear snowstorm.
Yeah. So kind of looking around, and now and I got a perspective again. Like I remembered now where I
Mm-hmm.
am. Right. I was like, okay, I'm downtown. I'm on John Street someplace. And I
Mm-hmm.
now have my coordinates. Now, as I kind of mentioned before, I went to school downtown. Right. I went to Pace
Mm-hmm.
University. I knew every nook and cranny. That it was our campus, and that's another personal reason I don't like the whole trade center thing, because they took my campus away. Um, so I knew every nook and cranny of downtown, right? So I'm like, okay, now I know where I am. I'm very close to the
So
Brooklyn Bridge.
could you feel a little bit better now?
Well, I realized I'm not dying, so like I had come to realize that this is not where I go, or it's early, but you
Mhm.
know, that this part it seems to be over. Like I'm not gonna get squished. Let's just say leave it. So now um so yeah, now I'm trying to figure out next steps. And right. So in the middle downtowns, it's snowing, and again, everyone is every 5 seconds is trying to get their phone to work, right? So everyone's kind of calling, trying to get, no doubt, no, there's no tone, there's no nothing. So we're all everyone I can see on the street, kind of. So I was like, okay, I know how to get to the Brooklyn Bridge from here. That's as close to from I have to get to Queens. So I'll walk to the Brooklyn Bridge, and I'll walk over it, and get to Brooklyn, and hope, find it. I don't know, even if I have to walk, I guess I'll eventually make it to Queens. So, so now I'm meandering the streets, and I'm running into other gray people, right?
Okay.
One of On the way, some storefront opened up, I guess after the guy, again, we're all kind of coming out of hiding, and opened up his storefront and started handing out bottles of Poland Spring. And I thought that was
That was
again,
nice.
for like ground zero and shit like that, whatever. So I obviously took one, and I took an extra one because I wanted to give to this one guy. He was standing on the corner, like in shock. So I used it immediately to wash my face and rinse out my mouth and nose and shit. I didn't even drink any of it. God, so I started kind of like, cleaning myself, and I went to this guy who was just literally standing there, caked gray everywhere, this and that. And I'm like, come on, it's over, come on, let's have some, have some water, it's for you. So I think that he got him moving again, and like, he kind of came out of his like, kind of zombie stage and stuff.
Mhm.
So I found a few people like that, was able to kind of like, hey, we're all going this way. Come, this is the bridge. This is the bridge. So, you know, and now, so I know I'm heading in the right direction. Again, I'm gathering people left and right. People, again, not everybody, but about whatever 5 people I must have, you know, at least pointed the direction, right? If not, kind of shuck them out of their zone. And so on the way, I found there was a payphone, right?
Mhm.
So talk about a little
A
old school,
payphone.
a
For our
payphone.
millennials, let them know what a payphone is. Payphone, back in the day, we used to
Yeah,
actually have phones set up on a corner that you put. I think it eventually went up to like a quarter. I
a
think back in the
quarter.
day,
Yeah,
a quarter. You put a quarter, which is a coin for you millennials. You could dial a number, and you had that's how you call people when you didn't have cell phones.
yeah. When you didn't have cell phones, right? So we, clearly we had cell phones.
But they were
Payphones were
new.
kind of dying, but again, they were very valuable. Still at that time. And it was so it was a payphone, and apparently, since there was a line there, it was working. And I'd assumed that the landlines would probably work because they're all underground. Kind of
Mhm.
made sense. So I was like, I gotta let my wife know that I'm alive, or kind of something, right? So I wait on the line, which I'm assuming maybe I should. I just thought it was gonna take a long time, but again, New Yorkers were awesome. Everybody was quick. If you needed a quarter, because not a lot of people were carrying money, back then. Those, They were handing out money, whatever you wanted.
Mhm.
Boom, boom, boom. Like I got to the phone, made contact, said, "Hey, I'm alive. I have no idea how I'm getting home. Kiss my baby,
Mhm.
my son for me, and I will contact you, as soon as I know something else." And a little, loving exchange, and then kind of go. So I'm hightailing it now toward, quick step toward the Brooklyn Bridge. And this is kind of like, one of the kind of amazing parts of, I think, where this story goes, or at least what it does, right?
Mhm.
Um, so I get on the Brooklyn Bridge, like proper, right? It was like, there's like a ramping and stuff that kind of gets on it, right? So
Mhm.
I'm just on the Brooklyn Bridge going over the water part, and the bridge is packed, right? As you can imagine, right? So I'm finally like let's just say, kind of on the actual bridge part. And this is also, I think, in the first time in my life, other than the plume, that I looked over my shoulder, because I was like, if there's another plane out here, this bridge is an
Yeah.
awesome, it's full of people, and it's chaos, and there's fire trucks trying to come one way and people walking the other way, but now we're not, at least in the plume, right?
Mhm.
So so now you can see it. It's just like this big black area, kind of where downtown was, and again, the most beautiful violet sky everywhere else, and so I get under the Brooklyn Bridge, and it's starting to the plumes kind of starting to catch up a little bit, and then the second building falls,
Oh
right?
man.
So then I hear the same kind of cracking, kind of, you know, and it took me, like, again, I guess a few kind of seconds to realize what was going on, right? Like, it's the other building, like, oh shit. Now there's another plume heading my way, but at least I wasn't across the street from it, right? I'm at
Mhm.
least 5 blocks or 10 blocks away. So the um whole bridge starts running, and the plume of the other thing is kind of heading this way. And I'm thinking I had enough, right? Let me try to
Yeah.
keep going. But anytime somebody fell down, anytime something like that, there were people ready, pick you up, would carry you to the next side or whatever like that. I've seen it. I
Wow.
did it. I did everything like that. So yeah, if there was, kind of what I would say, like, the city was being attacked by Godzilla and everybody was running. No, nobody. It wasn't, everyone for himself.
Did that feeling of death when you come back over you once you heard the second building fall down, or
Well,
seen
like,
it?
it wasn't, and like, I didn't think I was immediately going to die, but I knew where I was not good,
It's like,
right?
yeah, it's like, "Oh,
And
here
that,
we go
and
again."
being in the plume definitely didn't seem kind of right too, right? So, and again, I don't know what else is going on, right? We all know, there's no other planes, but no one knew what this, I mean, the
Mm.
president was supposed to shoot anything in the sky down. Now, here's the fucked up part about this story, and at least it took me like a day or whatever, I guess, because I started going through the newspapers and stuff like that. The time I told you that the first building fell down,
Mhm.
right? That was the question. Was
Mhm.
9:50. Was 9:59 a.m. Right?
Mhm.
The time the second building came down was 10:37 a.m. That entire thing that I told you, that entire
Mhm.
story, was 36 minutes long.
Wow. I was gonna
36
ask
minutes.
you
I
about
had,
that because the timing. Because when you tell me the timeline that you were saying, I'm like, man, that seemed like you spent hours. In my mind, it's like, okay, you went
me
into the
too.
building, it happened, you ran, and it's like you went into this building and they gave you refuge, and that was about an hour or two, and then you made your walk over to the Brooklyn Bridge, and maybe that was about
I made a
another
phone
45
call.
minutes to get water. Then you made a phone call,
I made a
and then
phone
you got on the
call.
bridge again. Yeah, it sounded like about a 4 or 5 hour event.
Right. I was like, I was reading it in the newspaper, and it was like one of the first days that they actually had like a countdown. First building got hit by this. Second,
Mhm.
second building got hit by this. First building, and then I noticed the delta difference between the two buildings, and I was like, wait a minute, how could it have been 36 minutes? Like I'm saying, it felt like a lifetime, or like you're at least a 1 hour per event, right?
Mhm. So you got this plume chasing you, and you all are getting across the bridge. So you finally, obviously, made it across the
Yeah, I stayed
bridge.
ahead of the plume. I made a point to not stop. I was like, just keep going, right? I had so a little bit of a side note, but I had recently read a book or a series of books called Left Behind. It's like a kind of a Christian Revelations meets James Bond, right? And they
Mhm.
tried to make some movies on it and never really did good. But it was basically like what happens, you know, after what do you call it? What is it when everybody goes into like some people kind of go like into heaven? They get like beamed that it's like that one.
Purgatory?
No.
Or
It's like that day that it happens,
the day of
and it's so.
Pentecost, or what do they call it?
Oh, damn.
It would be on the tip of my tongue.
The rap. Is it like the rapture?
The
It was
rapture,
like, yeah, the
yeah.
rapture, right? So it was like what happens like 10 minutes after the rapture, right? Like like a
Mhm,
third of the planet disappears. Like they automatically go to heaven, right? Everybody else is
mhm,
left behind. That's the story of the book. And so planes are dropping because pilots are gone, cars, everyone's like not sure. And so what I learned from this book, and everyone please use this as, if I'm moving on, because who knows if the end of the world isn't still that far away, is you keep moving, right? You get from this corner to that corner. You get from this corner to that garbage can, to get to
mhm,
your next, place. You never stop. You get to the next part, no time to rest. You keep going. You keep moving. Keep moving is the best. Just keep swimming, like they, kind of says in Dory says in Nemo. Just keep moving. It makes a very big difference, And I think it made a very big difference to me. I almost felt like I had like a little bit of like inside training. I was like,
mhm.
don't stop, keep going, keep going.
So once you get across that bridge, when you finally made it across the bridge, what was that feeling like at that point?
Well, again, I knew I wasn't there, but I was, and I guess downtown Brooklyn now with loads of people. Again, a lot of emergency vehicles trying to get in. But you know, not snowy. By this time, that whole kind of walk from the bridge to the time I got to because there's a Long Island Railroad. I lived on Long Island at the time. There's a Long Island Railroad on J Street, like kind of in J Street. So again, I'm born and raised New Yorker. I knew that was there. So I said, and it's also a subway line. So I was like, all right, there might be something there. Let me go. So I started as I was meandering. And also, if you remember, the second thing that I wanted to do at 9:39 was to go to the bathroom. I still had to pee this whole time,
Oh, I
right?
thought you had
Like,
already peed by this point. Yeah.
no, where? In the darkness? In the freaking snow? Like, nah, it's like,
Most
so I
people
still
would
had
have peed on themselves by now.
so I figured this would be my chance to find a place to pee, right?
Mhm,
So I'm like brushing myself off, like so by the time I actually got to like, the station, I didn't look all grayish. I was, you
mhm.
know, grayer, but I didn't have like, it just wasn't like full of pounds of, dust and shit on me. And whenever I thought I would be able to find like a hotel or a gas station and all that kind of shit, the shit was closed. Everything was closed. And nobody wanted nothing to get into. In fact, you even went up to like a place and said, "Hey, can I come in?" They would be like, "Why? What are you, a tourist?" Again, I did it again. Tourist. Why? What are you, a terrorist? What are you trying to hide? I'm like, well, no, I gotta pee. So I'm like, forget it. I'm just gonna, I'm gonna have to hold it in. And then I eventually get to this train station, you know, and
Mhm.
there's again, and the first time I've ever seen armored police people in my entire life, like full riot gear, semi-automatic weapons, helmets, everything, just getting people, this way, this way, this way. Because apparently all the trains in the other boroughs were working, so that's actually pretty cool. So I just got onto, my train, the one going to my line, and
And you still
you know,
carrying this laptop, by the way.
I'm still carrying the freaking laptop.
No charger, but
Um,
you got the laptop.
yeah, have my notebook, again, have my computer, like again, this is like now, like this is a packed train, packed commuter train, going to the
Mhm,
suburbs. And I actually got a seat. And, when we came out of the, like kind of like the tunnel, you got to see Manhattan again in the background. Right. And,
mhm.
you can see half of it is all, smoky, black, this, that, and the other half, the sun started to kind of break through a lot, a lot of different places. So it almost had like a dawn-ish effect, when you were kind of like, like the
Mhm.
first lights kind of getting through. And I looked around the train, and there were like a few other gray people, like kind of, a lot of just, I don't know, regular people, I guess, if we want to kind of call it. Um, you know, um, and then I kind of noticed that it was also, and I always kind of, I kind of find it somewhat funny, but Fashion Week always takes place in New York during 9/11. Not on purpose. It was always that week, right?
Mhm.
So it was just like there was like a kind of like a contrast to like the advertisements on the train about Fashion Week starting 9/11/01. You started, kind of knew
Mhm.
nothing was the same anymore. It was like, nothing.
Mhm.
Our political scenarios we're probably at war. If we're not at war, we better be at war by the time I get home. Who the fuck did this?
Mhm.
And all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
So like and so you did a lot of like it was a long ride. It was a lot of reflecting kind of going on, and, I
So once you get on the train, how long did it take you to get home from that point?
well, I would say it would normally be a it was, let's just say 40 minutes. It was
Mhm.
probably like a 40-minute train, because there was nothing, there was nothing else kind of going on. So they were just pushing trains out of the city as fast as they can. So, just in that kind of irony uh, of the time gap, so, I was home before 12 o'clock, right? Like I got home really early, like, so I actually, there was a couple of things that happened, and I there was there's an Italian word for kind of like, crazy, stupid, whatever, stunad. I was a little stunad. So I missed my stop. I should have got off,
Oh,
So
wow.
I got off the next stop, which is just like two towns over or whatever, in Long Island, and I called my wife and I was like, hey, missed my stop, would you mind come getting me, because I still had to get, and so that's kind of when I, finally made like contact with my family, for the like kind of first time,
So now you
for the
got
whole
that
world.
deep breath, that sigh of relief, but
Yeah,
did you get a chance to use the bathroom in the train station?
I did. I used it on the, yeah,
Okay,
I
good.
pushed my way, while I was on the train. I was like, that's it. I got to go. Like, this isn't normal. Like this is bad. I'm in
Yes.
pain. Like all the aches are coming in. I'm barely holding on.
We got about
So,
5 minutes, left, Rich. So, what I wanna ask you, how has that experience changed your life?
well, I guess physically there are some flashbacks that I still kind of experience. Uh,
Mhm.
they're mostly around like the noise, like again like a rolling thunder. Sometimes it's like when you listen to a train come into a station, or if you ever been to Niagara Falls, it has like that kind of like sound to it.
Mhm.
Uh, Also, if you like, not now, but definitely in the beginning, if you surprised me, I would
Mhm.
have a flashback. Like, there were days like I dropped to my knees, like kind of like thinking that the
Yeah, a little
buildings
the
were coming.
PTSD, yeah.
Yeah. But I don't have that other than some of the noise stuff, like kind of right there. The other thing that, kind of, I think we all grew up, right? That day, like you kind of thought you were invincible. There were days, like, you know, young Thundercat running around, making businesses
Mhm.
and doing shit, whatever. And then, you realize that, it probably like any
Things
near
can
death
happen.
experience that shit, yeah, shit changed. I no longer drank 8-year-old scotch. That was like, I was at the store, a couple of days later, and I was buying like some liquor because everybody was home. Nobody was going, work. Nobody was going to school, this and that. And I remember when I was about to pay for it, and I'm like, "Yo, man, life's too short to drink bad scotch, man." Like 8-year-old scotch. I'm like, "That's it," I'm like going back and I'm buying the good stuff. So I always started drinking the good stuff from that point. It was just kind of life's too short, for the bad stuff.
I'm
I
glad you
have
said
a
that. You
different,
motivated me now to get the good stuff.
right? Yeah, life's too short. Because again, there's more. But when I think about like the future of work, like in the work attitude, like could
Mhm.
you imagine like something like that happening after COVID? You know,
Oh,
like
no. It would decimate.
Now, that happened on Wednesday. My company had a spot ready for me on Monday in a different building, right? We all
Mhm.
went back to work on Monday. I had a computer and I had a chair. That's all I had. And I
So
still
you
didn't have my
finally
power
so
cord.
yeah, I was gonna ask you about that power cord. Did you ever get the power cord or did you have to order a new one?
I couldn't order a new one because there was nothing being shipped into New York for like weeks
Wow.
of
So how did
anything
you
like
use
that.
the computer? You had to wait till that Monday to get one at the new office?
No, no one knew. There was just chaos, bro. There was nobody looking for a power cord for nobody. They were just trying to get people in and settled and all that kind of stuff, which amazingly they did. Um, but how I used my computer was like this. Do you know? I used the term before when it came to skip breathing, but it's a term for scuba divers, right? You're supposed to like take breaths at a regular base, but if you know
Mhm,
you're running low and stuff, you can kind of hold your breath for one or two of those cycles to save it. So I would
mhm,
open up my computer for like 5 minutes at a time. I would prepare what I needed, like client contact information, this,
mhm.
that, whatever. And there's still no internet really back then. So it wasn't like I was able to email myself some stuff or whatever. So I was like, okay, what do I need? Like immediately this second. And I would open up my computer and run it for 5 minutes and then close it again. And I did that for 3 months until
Wow.
until I was able to get my computer cord. I'd
Wow,
always
that
ask somebody if they had like an IBM or something. Just let me toot up a little bit, whatever. Nah, none of that, man.
wow. This has been an awesome, impactful story. I thank you for coming on and sharing. I know it's not easy and it probably bring back some emotional trauma that you suffered
Yeah,
from back then. I couldn't imagine what you went through. But I think it's important that you came on and you told your story and reminded people of just how short life is and just how important
yeah.
life is and something to think about tomorrow. Well, our
Please,
time is just about up on this hour. If you liked our content, I ask that you like and subscribe. You can catch
thank
us,
you.
of course, next Wednesday here on WDJY 99.1 FM. And you can also catch us on YouTube, Lifestyle After Five. And you can catch us on Spotify, also at Lifestyle After Five, or you can always hit us up at www.aliafter5.com, where you can see everything about us. And you can join our Discord if you're watching this video from our website or just by clicking on the QR code up in the corner. I hope you all have a safe and wonderful night. And Rich, I want to thank you again for coming on and being a guest. Is always a pleasure. And for those of you that join us, tune in for our weekly series coming with Rich.
Great.
Also, our futurism series, where Rich drops a lot of his knowledge and everything about Afrofuturism. Until then, y'all stay safe and we'll see y'all next Wednesday.
So long, guy. Just keep moving, everyone.